Welcome to the Investor Fuel Real Estate Investing Show, where I interview the nation's top real estate entrepreneurs, industry leaders, and other amazing entrepreneurs to help educate and inspire you to take your business and your life to the next level. My goal is to add tremendous value to you during every single episode of this show. If you get value, I'd love it if you subscribe on your favorite podcast player, subscribe on YouTube, and my very favorite, please share this with your community so we can impact even more entrepreneurs. Let's start today's show. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today, I'm here with Parker Stiles. We're going to be talking about kind of maturity in business. I think we've all, if you've been around for a while, like you find ways to pivot and move forward and find ways to kind of work through inefficiencies that maybe you had in your business or opportunities that this kind of new market we found ourselves in has presented us. And so there's lots of opportunities out there, and Parker's going to share what he's working on today. Parker, good to see you, buddy.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So before we jump in, we're going to talk about, there's a lot of folks that are in my community that, were primarily investors and have gotten into lending. And I started off in single family, and then I moved into a bunch of commercial multifamily stuff and looking at new opportunities that, 5 years ago, I never thought I would look at, but now I'm like, oh, that is, I either didn't really know what I didn't know, or maybe the opportunities changed. And so it's natural for us to kind of progress over time. And I'm excited to talk about some of those things with you. So before we jump in, maybe tell folks a little bit about you for anybody that doesn't know who you are.
Sure. So I started in this whole investing world about a decade ago. I was working as a real estate, agent in the industrial field. I knew I wanted to go in real estate forever. That was always kind of my goal, but I had no idea how to do it, right? There's so many avenues or so many roads to go down in real estate. I think that's why the analysis paralysis comes and bites people a lot of the times, is because of all the options, the ways to skin the cat, the ways to make money. But kind of to fast forward through that, I ended up getting let go from my first real job out of college after about 8 months of being there. And thank goodness, about 6 months prior to that, I stumbled into rehabbing houses. Wholesale, this is 2014. Wholesaling wasn't a big term back then. It was rehabbing. I was reading Bigger Pockets, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, all the stuff, listening to podcasts. I stumbled into Matt Theriault, was kind of the first of the guys on the scene for me that I just really gravitated to. And I said, you know what? If I ever get to the point where I'm confident enough to quit this job, or I, God forbid, get fired or something like that, I'm going to go full into rehabbing properties and be a real estate investor. And be careful what you wish for. That actually happened. I got let go, had a pity party for a few days, and just down on myself. I'm unemployable. I guess I should say that first. I've been fired from like 6 or 7 jobs. My dad actually fired me working for him, back in the day. That's a whole nother long story. But I didn't fit in the box that everybody tried to put me in. I needed something different. I didn't take orders very well. Like if it needed to be done, I had to tell myself to do it, not somebody else telling me to do it. And so I didn't know what that meant for a long time, other than me just not fitting in that box that everybody said I needed to fit into. So I had to create my own box. And I finally realized that box was entrepreneurship. I had to be my own boss. So that's what I did. After my pity party for a few 6-packs in a few days, I said, let's, this is what you asked for. It's no turning back now. And, this is your only option. So I burned the boats. There were no bridges. It was that. And I was so embarrassed that I didn't get fired from waiting tables. I got fired from like my first real job out of college. I didn't want to tell my parents. I didn't want to tell, I was embarrassed to tell my girlfriend at the time, but I was so dedicated to make this work and not go back to anything else, because nothing else had worked for me. And so I had to do this. So I spent the next 60 days just podcasts, YouTube, books, in my pajamas all day at the house, just engorged in content and learning and creating a business plan that ultimately I would tell my parents at a dinner I had with them after a few too many drinks, and told them that I got fired from my job 2 months prior and that I was going to be a real estate investor now. And that it honestly, they took it a little bit better than I thought they were going to. And they were, it was encouraging. It was probably, they probably had a couple things they wanted to say but didn't say, which was good. And I just had a chip on my shoulder to make it work. And that was how I got my start in all this. It took me 8 months from that initial start that I had when I had my job, from that point to do my first deal. But my first deal was actually a wholesale. Before that was even really a term. I bought it. I was going to rehab it. I went to an event, my first like actual kind of investors event, and I met a guy that said, "Why don't you wholesale it?" I said, "What's that? How do you do that?" And he told me, and I said, "Well, why would anybody else pay more than what I paid the max? Like, I got my calculators, I know my repair costs, blah blah blah." He said, "Why are you negotiating for somebody that you don't even know yet? Like, you don't know how much they're willing to pay. You don't know what they're going to do to the property. You don't know if they have 5 rentals in that neighborhood and are willing to overpay." And I said, "You're right." I called some guys that I had met through my networking, some other wholesalers, posted some Craigslist ads, and I had that deal sold the next week. And within a couple weeks later, I had my first wire transfer for about $16,000 into my bank account. And at that point, it was real. If I could do it one time, I could do it 100 times, and there was no turning back. And that was kind of my start in all of this.
That's great. That's great. And over the past 10 years or so, you've done a lot of deals, and you're moving into all sorts of different asset classes and stuff now as well.
Yeah, we've done about I've done a little under 600 deals. We have a private money or hard money lending business where we fund investor transactions, partially for the cash buyers that are buying the deals through my wholesaling and flipping business, and then obviously they're getting deals from elsewhere too, so we want to fund those also. And then we have I run a coaching business. I basically have 3 businesses that create cash. And then I take that cash and I put it into passive streams, residential real estate, commercial real estate, oil and gas, mineral rights, royalty deals, just however I can diversify to take active gains and convert them into passive streams. Because if there's one piece of advice that I would give, that I got given over and over and over and over again, and it's so hard to make this decision in the moment. If you go talk to any older, experienced real estate investor and you ask them what their one takeaway would be, or their one piece of advice, most of the time they're going to say something along the lines of hold more and sell less.
Yeah, for sure.
Hold more, long-term real estate, the wealth building aspects, but it is so hard to trade that $300 a month for a $30,000 paycheck, or vice versa. But that's huge, because when things get tough and the flipping business and deal volume dries up, and you're saying you've been working for X amount of years and you don't really have much to show for it in terms of a portfolio or net worth creation, that can be a disappointing position that you don't want to find yourself in years down the road. So
Yep.
bite off a little bit at a time. Flip
Yeah,
a
no
couple,
doubt.
hold one. Flip a couple, hold one.
No doubt. Yeah. I've been podcasting for a long time now, almost 13 years, and have been around for a long, long time, with my own business. And a lot of the 2 biggest things I hear are people that wish they had kept more properties, or they had reinvested their profits into, real estate, and that they had started earlier. Right. And so I think
Right.
you can't, obviously you can't go back in time and change that, but you can change it going forward. And you can hear stories like this and inspire you to, kind of learn those lessons before you have to learn them the hard way. One thing that you said up front that I'll say, this show really is aimed at kind of the pro level investor. A lot of folks that are actively doing this on a regular basis. But if you are a newbie and you're listening to this, I want you to pay close attention that from the time Parker decided to go all in and the time he did his first deal was 8 months. Right. It took me 4 months to do my first deal. And so the problem is a lot of people that want immediate gratification. Like you decide to get into this, but it just takes time. And the reality is You're even going to hear in just a second some of the pivots that Parker's made that are, it's just evolution. It's where the market is now. It's learning more about yourself and what you don't want to do and what you do want to do. It's a lot of things like that. But the important thing is don't give up, because the best parts of what this business can provide you just take time, quite frankly. I mean, building wealth takes time. This isn't the lottery. You don't just like, go have a Hail Mary and get rich overnight. It just doesn't work that way. But you can get rich for sure as long as you play the game. So hey, let's talk about
But it's
one.
kind of, but on a short note, it's kind of crazy, right? Because I've only been doing this 10 years. I'm blown away on a consistent basis. Like it's the gap or the gain, right? You gotta know how to look at your accomplishment so far and not compare yourself to everybody that you think you should be there by now and all of that. That's all lies. That's all mind games that your head tries to play tricks on you. But if you look at where you've come from and you compare that amount of time, and you surround yourself by people who are ahead of you and doing it the right way, not only that have gotten where you want to go, but ideally got there doing the things that you plan to do to get there. That's
Yep.
a piece that a lot of people miss.
Yeah, for sure.
That you can do an incredible amount of things in a, comparatively speaking, short amount of time.
Yep.
10 years is not that long of a time period to
No.
change your life and your children's lives forever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump into some of the pivots you've made. So obviously, there've been a lot of changes in some of the markets where you were operating. Maybe it's not obvious yet. It will be when you talk about it. Some of the changes, like laws that have changed and things like that, that left you kind of deciding to just branch out and operate across a lot of states. So there's always people that are in one market and they decide that the grass is greener to go out further. There's some people that do virtual and do really, really well, but there are some challenges to go from a kind of a single, certainly a single market, and especially if it's a larger area, into multiple markets and hitting rural land. So just talk about like why you made that decision. Talk a little bit about what you're doing and kind of why you made that decision and some of the lessons so far.
well, I say South Carolina and the board of realtors, made that decision for me. Basically, I mean, they passed a bill back in May of 2024. Man, it's almost been a year now, that said that wholesaling is illegal. Kind of sounds crazy to even say that something that I was doing that was providing for my family was illegal. It's saying that it's hurting the seller in a negative way, where I don't want to go down a rabbit hole here, but if this all plays out and people actually stop doing it right now, they're not really slapping wrists. There's nobody getting thrown in a class action lawsuit. I've made the decision to no longer do it because I feel like I have too much to lose, and I don't want my team to suffer for us getting put through something like that. So we've moved away. But if everybody else moves away, think about the lack of offers and the lack of options that creates for a seller that is in a pickle and needs to do something quickly. Let's not talk about the. I understand there's a few bad eggs out there. There's a few bad eggs in every bunch, where old ladies getting taken advantage of, and there's contract on top of contract on top of contract, and just getting real hairy and messy and all of that stuff. I get it, and I'm okay if there's some licensure, even if it's not a real estate agent license. I don't even think that's applicable. Maybe a certain type of licensure that a wholesaler would have to be able to do something like this. I'm okay with barriers to entry. Making it illegal, I think all that does is reduce the price that a seller can get for their home, because with less options comes less people willing to do it, comes more risk for the people that are doing it, comes lower purchase prices, lower offer prices. So I don't know what the 5-year picture of that looks like, but in my opinion, it isn't the best for the seller. But anyway, they made that move, and we decided to move away. And so we went heavier into North Carolina. Side note, North Carolina is doing something similar right now, so that's another bone to pick. We'll have to work on. But we've also started to eliminate single points of failure by going statewide with PPC marketing. So we're advertising in, I believe, 13 different states now. with statewide PPC. I'm learning to manage my own AdWords accounts in-house while also split testing with an agency. And we have some deep marketing. I call that wide marketing. We have some deep marketing, direct mail, television, in a few different markets within North Carolina.
And so talk about like, I mean, as you say, you're eliminating single points of failure. So you're just opening up to lots of states so that if one state changes the laws or tries to change the laws or changes the rules, like it's not going to impact your whole business as if you were just operating in that one state, right?
Yeah, South Carolina hurt. I mean, that was not a tough. I mean, that was not an easy move that we've made to pivot and do what we've tried to do. I would love to not have to do that again. And while we may have to do something with North Carolina, we have already started the process. We've done deals in 7 different states this year so far. We are going to be much more apt to just spread out in the areas that we've identified outside of singular states to be able to do that. Now, if you're in statewide, if in a statewide marketing plan, you're not just going to get deals in Charlotte or Dallas or major metros. You're going to get deals all over the place. So that required us to learn how to do novation deals better or RBP deals, whatever EPP, whatever 3-letter acronym you want to put on it. It's utilizing the MLS, the nation's best buyers list, to be able to make a profit while still offering the done for you service to the seller. So, what's the done for you? We're still paying for their closing costs. We're still paying for the commissions, if applicable, on the novation side. If the lender needs the roof replaced on the property, we'll not only pay for the roof, we'll contract the work and have it done. That's just services that a real estate agent's never going to offer their client. And we do all the negotiation. It's the stuff we're doing every day anyway. So we had to get really good at those because by default, getting deals in these outskirt areas, we need to be able to get them on the MLS sometimes because investor lift, investor base, whatever your dispo strategy is, you're not always going to be able to find, that buyer.
The rural markets are a challenge. Yeah. Acquisitions is usually easier. Dispo is much harder.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So wide marketing, you're going to be able to get a cheaper cost per contract. Sellers are going to be easier to negotiate with but your dispo is going to be more challenging. That's where the sales focus needs to be placed more so almost. If you are deep in one or a few core markets, it's probably going to be more expensive and time consuming to get a deal. But when you get a deal, it's almost going to sell itself.
So kind of pivoting there, leveling up and broadening your target so that you can buy across lots of markets and mitigate your risk that way. So let's talk a little about lending. So you've obviously, and I know quite a few folks that have moved into lending over the past year or two, just because they're like, I know all the buyers in my market. They're usually buying from me and then borrowing from somebody else. And it's this realization that once you've been in the business long enough, you have enough relationships to where you're like, you might not be the biggest lender in town, but you could become a
You
formidable
don't need to be.
lender overnight, right? So you could have a decent business just kind of right out of the gate. So talk about what you're doing there.
Yeah, I was just getting inquiries from buyers. Hey, can you fund this deal? Can you do this one? Can you fund my rehab here? I'm buying this deal from another person. Can you do this one also? And it just kind of started to stack. Initially, it was just a good way to keep my cash at work. After that, I had raised private money for my flipping business. So I said, I guess I can use my private money lenders on this as well. And so I started funding it there. Then I gravitated towards how do we scale from here? And there's warehouse lines of credit, facility lines. There's private equity companies that offer warehouse lines that don't have the restrictions of banks. There's a lot of different ways. It's a whole nother business. It's a whole nother, rabbit hole. There's a whole nother series of masterminds and coaches and all the stuff. But it's been really cool because I think the first year that I actually said, let's call it the year that I got past just storing stuff in a couple Google Drive folders. Like I actually started putting some SOPs in place and, kind of built out a little home in my CRM, for it. And I netted like 110 grand, I think, that first year from something that probably, I mean, a fraction of the amount of time invested into that. And so it was a light bulb of this is really scalable. This makes sense. It's asset based lending. I've been buying and selling assets for many years. While I don't want to take back the asset, I'm poised to do so if I needed to. And so, since then we've partnered with some banks. We've gotten some extra funds. I've brought on a partner that's focused on the financial aspect. I'm focused on the demand and the real estate and lead gen aspect. And we're funding deals in Georgia and the Carolinas, and then we'll do transactional funding across the country as well.
That's great. So so talk about this, like, how do you make sure that that doesn't become a distraction for you? Like, when you start to bolt these things on, sometimes it's real easy to drop the ball somewhere else. How do you navigate that?
You master one step first and get a good team around you and buy your time back. And before you go put your eyes on that next shiny object, I mean, you have to have the time to do it. If you have to rob Peter to pay Paul time wise, then it's not the right time for you to go do that. That's, in short, that's the best answer that I have
Yep.
there.
Yep. Cool. So next, we're going to talk about kind of leveling up on your passive, so-called passive investing. Rentals aren't always passive, but I know you've got some single family and decided to start diversifying there. So let's talk about that a little bit.
I started buying rentals in 2016. Thank God that I had the coaching or was reading the right books to say, don't just sell everything. And so we've bought rentals as we went. We've single family, detached. We've got some condos. We've got some small multifamily. I've got some commercial, and over the years, it's been a great portfolio, and the properties have increased dramatically. It's been amazing to leverage those for revolving lines of credit that have serviced my lending business, serviced my flipping business, and been able to pull cash out through refinances. I mean, just all the stuff that long-term real estate has to offer. It's amazing. Good owner financing deals on the front end. In addition to rentals, we have a note portfolio. So not short-term notes with the hard money lending, but long-term notes. We buy properties and sell them on owner financing to book the debt, 30-year, 25-year mortgages, and just collect the cash flow there. Now, you mentioned passive earlier. That's passive.
Yeah.
Rental property is not passive.
Yeah.
Holding the note definitely is much more passive. When their roof's leaking, they don't call the bank to come fix it.
Right.
So that's been cool to see. But now, let me back up for a second. Everything I've read just kind of says buy and hold forever. I'm generalizing there a little bit, but the overall principle is don't sell everything, buy it, and forget about it. And it's going to grow. It's going to pay you cash flow. It's going to appreciate. You're going to get tax benefits, and that's great. But I think we get lost there a little bit, and we hold stuff longer than it was meant to be held, mainly because we're not tracking the right KPIs. And people aren't organized with their portfolio. And if they're not organized with their portfolio, they think they know what they're making, but they don't actually know what they're making. So here's a good example that you should go through, just a practice that you should go through. Take a portion of your rentals or all your rentals that you've had for at least 2 years. Go back and ask your bookkeeper to pull the last 2 years of expenses for each one of those properties, and then annualize it down based on those expenditures. If you have 3 years worth of data, then even better, you can do that. And compare that number to the 1 month of annual rent that you've been comparing it to for what your calculator says your cap rate is. I bet you'll be shocked, especially in the last 18 months, of how much prices have gone up on all the little knick-knacky things that you have to fix. But on top of that, if you have, 15, 25, 35 different rental properties. You probably have a bunch of LLCs if you set it up correctly. You probably have a pretty fat bookkeeping payment. You probably have a lot of tax returns. There's a lot of soft costs that aren't wrapped up into rental property investing, and all of that needs to come out of your net. So when you back out the true expenses, the true repair costs, the true vacancy, what are you really making? Like, what's that return really look like? And I think people are just kind of scared slash lazy to do the DD to really get to that number. And if they did, they'd find out this doesn't make a whole lot of sense, or doesn't make as much sense as I thought it did.
Right.
And I did that exercise this year after, again, this is not I didn't wake up one morning and like think to do that. I had to get it pounded into my head, just like most other people. I had to hear it multiple times before I actually did the exercise and had the light bulb moment. And so this year is my year of leveling up the portfolio. I'm going in and looking at it at the asset level and saying which ones make sense to keep and which ones don't meet my minimum criteria. And that criteria is largely based around return on equity. Not cash on cash return, not cap rate, but what could you pull out of that property in a sale after expenses? And then how much money based on your net cash flow, what's the percentage there? Mine was averaging under 5%. And you go ask somebody like me, hey, can you do better than 5% on your money? Like, it's an instant yes. And so I'm looking at these commercial properties because I love triple net lease properties. I've had some experience with them in the past. I own a small percentage of a couple of them, but I've never really done it all myself. And I'm on Crexy and looking at these properties, and they're advertised at a 7 cap or an 8 cap, or some are even, a 6 cap. You go get a Starbucks on a hard corner, you're like 5.5. But triple net means, well, absolute triple net, it's gotten a little watered down, means no landlord responsibilities. It means the tenant pays for everything from property taxes to the roof to repaving the asphalt parking lot if need be. And you look at a 6 cap and you turn it away. You kind of, stick your nose up in there. Like, I'm a real estate investor. I don't need to just park my money and get a 6 cap. But I was saying yes to a 4.5 cap. It's basically what I was doing, with way more risk, way more noise, tenants, toilets, and termites, all the stuff. Some of them were paid off free and clear, where I had no principal pay down benefits each month. I had already cost segged the property, so I ripped that benefit out years ago, right? And I got a tenant to deal with every year, or every 2 years based on the lease renewals. And so I'm saying no to a higher percentage return without any of that noise, and a 10-year lease or a 15-year lease, potentially even corporate guaranteed X-year lease. Somebody like slapped me in the face with a sock. I mean, it was just like an eye-opening moment. Like, this does not make sense. So this was the year of looking at those assets at a deeper level, doing some reverse 1031 exchanges, and repurposing that cash flow to where I'm looking at 2.5xing my net income to the bottom line, while kicking out all the noise and honestly having to do anything, barring some worst case scenario situation, for the next 10 plus years.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I think you have to look at it. I mean, I've got a paid off rental portfolio, and I've had some are mostly paid off. I've had some and I'm a finance guy. I understand, I'm a real estate guy. I understand leverage and everything, but there's been some benefit to, like, well, there's, it's a known quantity. Like, I appreciate that it's paid off. I'm not over levered, not even close. But I also know that there's a whole nother world out there. And so we're looking at lots of things right now that kind of make more sense. Do I wish I'd refined everything at 3.5%, 4%? Like, probably in hindsight, but decided to not do that. And here
Me
we
too.
are. So yeah. So, hey, we've got just a little bit of time left. Maybe you could share a little bit on how folks can kind of look at their business, and, some tips you might have for folks to kind of evaluate every once in a while, like, here's where I'm at. We get so busy, we're so caught in the weeds for just kind of operating the day to day, but to kind of like lift up every once in a while and say, "Oh, like, I need to do some spring cleaning. What can I do to kind of pivot where it makes sense? Stop doing stuff and start doing stuff." Like, what advice can you give to people to periodically kind of go through that process of being able to level up?
Your vision, your why, your destiny, what we're all working towards disappears the day you stop talking about it. So we get so in the weeds, we stop talking about why we started to do this in the first place. I think an annual exercise is just one example, but the exercise of your perfect day, you get in there, you write it down, you go somewhere where you can just get separated from all the noise and really just think. And what does that perfect day look like that you initially started all of this to create? And then you record it, yourself speaking it, really getting into it. And maybe you listen to that recording on a weekly basis. Maybe it's a monthly basis. I don't know. But we have to be vigilant about stepping back and remembering why we started these individual things, because one stacks on top of the other, stacks on top of the other. Like I mentioned the four pillars that we're focusing on: flipping, lending, coaching, and the passive portfolio. I have to do the same thing with that. I mean, at the end of this year, I've got my lanes that I'm in and I'm pushing hard, and one or two may get cut at the end of the year, depending on how everything pans out. And I'm going to have to reassess where I want my time to go, what I want everything's virtual that I have. I don't go to an office. I don't have an office that anybody else goes to. I built everything that I have largely based on the lifestyle that I want to live. And I'll tell you, because I've ran into this wall a couple times, I call it we build a golden cage around ourselves somewhere. That entrepreneurial cage of, or some people call it golden handcuffs, right? We put ourselves in a position where we don't have freedom, where we started all this to have freedom to begin with. And it just takes being clear consistently. And I say consistently because your vision's going to change, but you have to give yourself the time and the mental bandwidth to actually process that vision in order to do something different. You keep doing the same thing, going down the same path, you're going to get the same result. You got to have the time to think about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Parker, thanks for sharing your insights with us and your experience so far. So if folks want to connect with you in any way or learn more, where can they go?
Well, we'd love to fund any loans that you have. Georgia and the Carolinas is where fasttrackfunding.com is servicing. Transactional funding nationwide if you need those wholesale deals funded quick. And then if you're interested in checking out what I have going at coachingwithparker.com, we've got that there as well. But Mike, I appreciate you letting me come on and talk to your listeners. It's a great show. You've got a great mastermind group as well, and appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks, man. Good to see you. I appreciate you sharing your insights.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Everybody, like Parker said, you get into this business and you got into this for probably initially financial freedom. Ultimately, it's time freedom, is to be able to buy back your time and live the life that you want to live. And so it's important that you don't have to, you're not, as they say, you're not a tree, right? You can pick up and leave, you can move, you can pivot, and you have to. At the end of the day, as an entrepreneur, your business changes, the market changes, the market cycles change, state laws change, lots of things change, and you need to just be resilient and kind of work through those things. I mean, that's why ultimately you can make the big bucks, is because you can pivot and move and ebb and flow. You're not a cruise ship, you're like a speedboat, and that's how you need to act as a business. So make sure you're evaluating kind of where you're at, making sure that it's on track with your vision, and making sure that as the market market shifts or as your life shifts, if things shift, your kids get older and maybe you can do things differently, or your kids are young and you want to operate your business differently. That's why you got into entrepreneurship for. So make sure that you don't just lay out this plan and never waver from that. You don't have to do that. You can kind of pivot as you need to in your business. So appreciate you guys for joining us on the show today. We'll see you next time. Take care. Thanks for joining us for today's show. You can learn more about the amazing benefits of the Investor Fuel Mastermind community, including surrounding yourself with hundreds of other rock stars, 100% financing on your deals, and members-only discounts from vendors you're likely already using that, as a member of Investor Fuel, will save you more than the cost of your membership. Visit investorfuel.com to learn more. You can also check out the show's notes for access to free resources, how to get access to world-class lead generation, and even how to work with me directly one-on-one. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another episode. See you on the next show.